very well-known psychologist or psychoanalyst, he also believes that the whole religious belief and practices is very much rooted in the wish, a wish or a sense of fear in a child. Since the very childhood, what happens? A psychic, what do you call? uh, a sense of fear or a sense of fear is developed in a wish in a child. Like for example, it's an innate, it's innate in a child. It's not mother sense of a father, like father has to be to dream. These are some of the innate behaviors a child displays, which is very much inherent in the child since birth, right? And which slowly, as they encounter with the environment, it grows and slowly develops in certain behaviors or characters. So there inherent in a child, it has been inherent, but in the latter in the process, of human history or human development, this inherent concepts of fear slowly develop, and the whole idea of spirit or God or supreme being, begin to develop, and slowly the whole idea of religious belief and practices slowly has developed. So these are some of the theories or some of the what do you call, explanations or approaches the scholars have put forward regarding the origin and the development of religion. All right. Now, next, coming to the topic, which is very much in your syllabus, that is the definition and the meaning of the term religion. Okay. Now, the word religion seems to have, the root word seems to be a Latin word, and the word is religare. See, legere means or to come together. All right. So religare, re is to rebound. So re is like to rebound or rebinding together. All right. So religare means to rebind or rebinding things together. All right. Now again, the another word, Latin word noun is religio. All right. And this religio and religare together seems to have formed the word religion, and the whole idea of the root meaning or root word, the meaning of the root word is also very much inherent and attached to the term religion, English word religion. All right. So religio, religio also means obligation or reverence, reverence to God, spirit, or whatever. All right. So if we coin these two terms, if you coin these two terms and the meaning that is attached to it, we can see that religion, refers to a particular belief system or practices that is operating in a community. All right. Okay, so see, earlier what happens when it comes to the Romans. See, Romans also had used to perform quite a lot of rituals in honor of so many different gods. All right. So what happens? These rituals also functioned and also were practiced sometimes by an individual family. It differed, by an individual family. Sometimes in a larger group, and sometimes the whole state. Some of the practices were from the whole state will be doing that particular practice. So earlier what happens, it varied, so but later on what happens, the word religion, religare or religio, it referred to a total type, total system of belief and practices of a particular community, the Hindu community has a certain belief system and practices which brings them together in a common platform, right? And that binds them together also as a Hindu community, as a Christian community, it gives we have a certain belief system, a faith or belief system or practices, which gives a common platform where we come together and we are binded together as one religious community. So in this way, actually, this religion means binding people together in one common practice and belief system. All right. Now, when it comes to Indian terms, so all those were the English terms, meaning of the English terms. Now, if we come to the Indian tradition, the word dharma is used in order to define religion. All right. So when it comes to the term dharma, also means to hold, to sustain, and to support. Right? To hold, to sustain, and to support. So this itself gives a wider, it has a wider meaning, not just one, not just religion which meets the need of, meets the spiritual need, but it encompasses the whole ontological order. That means God, human, world. God, human, world relationship, as well as that means human aspirations for both material as a spiritual life. All these theories or concepts are included in the term called dharma. All right. Interestingly, again, when it comes to philosophy, just leave that aside for some time, and let us look into into philosophy. When it comes to Indian philosophy, the word darshana is used. All right. So darshana, dar means drish. It comes from the root, drish, to see or vision, right? So darshana means to see the self, S-E-L-F, to see yourself. Now, that doesn't mean a kind of a mirror type, but of course it has a similar reflection. Seeing the self, the whole purpose of philosophy is to see your very being, your intrinsic nature, which is divine, actually, right? So so philosophy, when it comes to Indian philosophy, only an intellectual search, but it is both, not along with the intellectual, it is also to fulfill the spiritual need of a person. It has very much practical motive. Now, according to Indian philosophy, if the intellectual search is not practically applicable, if it is not moral, if it is not practically applicable, then such philosophy will not survive, and those philosophies are not genuine. So that is what Indian philosophy always propounded. So therefore, in Indian philosophy, there is no demarcation philosophy as such, right? There is so it is both intelligent, and the ultimate goal of the philosophy is actually liberation. Liberation means see the self, to be united. Ultimately, it has a practical motive, and it has also both spiritual as well as the intellectual, both intellectual as well as the spiritual pursuit. So therefore, what happens if we look at the meaning of dharma, religion, and philosophy? It seems to have a similar function when it comes to Indian philosophy or religion or dharma in Indian terms. All right. Ultimately, both dharma as well as darshana, as well as darshana, the ultimate goal, it serves the same goal and purpose. So this is as a whole, this is the meaning of the religion. Now, various scholars have okay. Okay. Various scholars have defined a religion, all right, no? Depending depending upon their own interest, special, depending upon their own specialization. Like for example, Manching was a sociologist, so he tried to define religion from a sociological perspective. So therefore, I have brought out some of the definitions. There are many. I have brought out some.
Your voice is breaking very
Definitely
frequently.
send you, but I will just pick up some of the definitions for you to.
Hello, ma'am. Your voice is breaking very frequently.
Is it?
Yes.
Ma'am, the voice as well as the video is
audible, right?
breaking.
But it's breaking.
No, it's getting stuck in the middle. The voice as well as the video.
Okay. Okay. The host, I do not. Maybe that is a network problem. See, actually, I can see to the we don't face such problems of network. Anyway, anyway, at least something or the other is audible, right? I'll be sending all the notes that we are lecturing. Okay, those which are not included in the syllabus, but I am bringing it to the class, lecturing it. All those notes also I will include it and send it. Right? Yeah. Okay, I hope this time it will work well. Okay, I'll share the screen. Okay, okay, I'll read out the definition of some of these scholars of human beings with the reality of the holy. That means and humans encounter with the holiness or with the supreme God or supreme being. You know. Next, while he was and practices related in relation or relating to sacred things or sacred beings or holy things. You know, so there are certain things which are set apart or practices which they need to follow in their daily life, and whatever you and this religion, you know, it unites humanity as a single moral, unites individuals as single human moral community. All right, single moral community. Then, okay, so Immanuel Kant, a philosopher, he also defines religion as the practice of high of justice. Now, Mahatma Gandhi also defines religion as a means to accept good for life. That means see, you all know that Mahatma Gandhi has given a lot of importance to truth and goodness. All right. So sometimes his understanding of satya or truth sometimes seems to be higher than God also. So therefore, for him, the very essence of religion is morality or goodness or truth. All right. So these are some of the definitions of great scholars. And through these definitions and the very meaning of the term religion, we can understand that religion is a kind of a particular belief system as well as practices which brings or which bind as community, you know, which binds people as a community. It is also a means to or what do you call it? Just 1 minute. Yes, and religion, you know, it is a community of people who has belief and faith in the in God, and they have certain belief system as well as certain practice which is common, and this practices binds them together as one community. It is also a way of life which teaches humanity or of ethics, you know, of good, you know, ethics practices. It also is morality, justice, good, truth. All this will be included, is it not? So it is human relationship. It is very much human relationship with God at the same time, and this relationship with God should be applicable or should be visible in human relationship with other fellow human beings. So that is what we can understand from this whole meaning of the term religion as well as the definitions that is put forward or given by various scholars, right? So basing on this definition and religion, we can also, and at the same time, as we encounter with various religious faith community, various faith community, we can see that we can understand okay, let me put it in this manner. As we encounter on daily basis with other faith communities, I think our mind also should be broadened enough, before having a particular judgment or basis, we need to broaden our mind basing upon the very meaning of religion, as well as the various definitions that we are seeing we see from the various scholars. At the same time, if we look at the origin as well as the development of religion also, I think it is we can see that religion is much broader in sense, and it's just not one, it's not narrow, but it is very, very broad. Okay, so you can also expect some of the questions if it is, for example, since it is also very much in exam preparations, you can also expect some questions from this topic and our encounter on the daily basis with multi-faith community, all right, various religious community. Okay, so you can expect some questions in that relation, not just simply meaning of religion or definition of religion. Okay, now I will leave aside the primal and the Dalit religion for some time because it is a small topic. At the end, we will try to cover up. But this afternoon, we will try to cover up. This morning, we will try to cover up Hinduism and, if possible, Buddhism and Jainism, because these are larger topics. Okay, so now let us switch on to the third section, that is Hinduism. Okay. Okay, I hope you can see this. So definition and the derivation of the term Hinduism. Okay, so when we talk about Hinduism, okay, all of us, I don't think there is anybody who is not familiar with Hinduism and their belief system.
Your screen is stuck.
Again. Hello?
Yeah, your screen is not displayed.
My screen is not displayed? Okay.
We see your screen, but we don't see the document that you are sharing.
You have not opened your document.
Okay, I'll share once again. I'll share it once again. Is it okay now? Is it okay now?
Not yet.
It is still, yes,
Yeah.
now it is visible, madam.
All right, okay, all right. Okay. Okay, so I don't think there is anybody in the class who do not know real Hinduism, all right? And if you are taking up this topic, I think it is the most familiar topic to all of you. So therefore, only the important portions, or maybe let me put the historical development, I will quickly cover up, I will quickly run into it. All right. Now, we all know about Hinduism, and at least the basic belief systems, you all are very well aware. But some of the things I think you may not be aware, like, for example, the term Hinduism or the term Hindu. All right. So it is very, very important as a student of theology and as a student of religion, it is very important that we also know a little bit about the its origination. Okay, instead of just having the knowledge from our own daily experiences, right? I think that is not enough. Many a times what happens, our daily encounter with certain religious community can be very, very narrow, and sometimes this narrow concept can also be a stumbling block, or let me put it, can be an hindrance in our relationship with people of other faiths. Okay, so therefore we have picked up this topic where we will see the definition of the term Hindu. Now, if we look at this term Hindu or Hinduism, you will not find it anywhere in, it is not a Sanskrit term, because we all know that Sanskrit is the language of the Hindus, isn't it? It is a auspicious, or say holy, or a sacred language. It is considered as a sacred language, and it is the father mother language of India, isn't it? So therefore, but however, yeah. However, when it comes to the term Hindu, it is not a Sanskrit term. Rather, it is a mispronunciation. Mispronunciation of the Persians, of the Sanskrit word, right? For example, the Sindhu River. I think you all know not necessarily the geographical geography of the ancient India, but at least you will have a little bit of idea, isn't it? See the whole idea. See this particular Indus land or Indus Valley. Indus Valley it is more or less like a peninsula, isn't it? On the one side, it is huge Himalayan mountain. Then another side, you will also see desert land. So in that way, it is more or less like a peninsula, and so what happens, and the river Indus seems to be dividing the Persia as well as the valley area, or Indus Valley, or India, let me put it, right? So this the Aryans, see the Aryans, a group of wanderers. They have been wandering from one place to another, and through Persia, this Aryans seems to have entered this valley, or Sindhu Valley, we call it, Sindhu River, isn't it? The Greeks seems to have called it as Indus River, but it is non-Indian term, or Sanskrit term is Sindhu River, actually. So these Aryans seems to have come through Persia and have come and settled here, and they could see that this land is very fertile because of the good irrigation facility, because of the Sindhu River, and they, the wanderer community, began to think of living a settled life. Now, when they came here, they were not. This place was not deserted. It was inhabited by a group of people who were very much different from them. Their religious practices, their features, their colors, their food habits, everything were very different from them. The Aryans were considered to be fair complexion people. Okay, so they always, the Aryans, and their worship belief system practices were quite different. They always considered themselves to be elevated, and they looked down upon the people who were indigenously settled in this land. And if we look down into the Rig Veda gives a very clear, not exactly clear cut, but it gives the tidbits of the whole process of settlement of the Aryans. And in a very nutshell, we can say that these indigenous people, the originally indigenous people, were later on subdued as slaves under the Aryans' house, and these Aryans began to rule the land, and they began to cultivate. So the wanderer, cattle rearing, wanderer life is past now, and they begin to live a settled life in this Indus land. So we can see that during that time are two groups of people, of different color. One is fair complexion, one is dark complexion people. All right. So these two group of people began to settle together in this land, although their positions, social standings were being now is being interchanged, right? But they were they settled down in this land, and they were living together. Now the Persians, all right, the Persians who are on the other side of the Sindhu River, isn't it? The Persians could not have this pronunciation issue with H and with Sa, S, So instead of calling Sindhu, they used to call it as Hindu River. And so they used the term Hindu. See, as the Aryans settled on this land, and their population slowly, their population grew. The territory also grew, right? At the beginning, their enemies were they always had fights, battles with the indigenous people. Right now, the indigenous people were subdued as slaves. Now they are not their enemies. Their enemies are among themselves only, because they begin to have a kind of a village system. Chief. It was ruled by slowly. Chief were selected, and the chiefs began to rule these certain villages, and was fortified. So it became their passion to have battles between the villages. That was their kind of a hobby. Now slowly what happens? Population increased, so also the territory also increased, and slowly even they began to develop a kind of a particular religious belief system. Right? It may be a fusion of the indigenous as well as the Aryan way of worship, but whatever it is, a kind of a set of belief system also originated, and slowly a monarchical type of government also developed. All right. Now what happens? This group of people, people seems to have a particular identity of their own. Right? Now these Persians, calling Sindhu as Hindu River, they begin to identify the people of this land as Hindus. Okay, the people, Hindus, meaning the people on the other side of the Hindu River, were known as Hindus. And their religious practices came to be known as Hinduism. All right. So if you look into this term, we can see that it is more a Persian term, and it is a borrowed term. It is a mispronounced Persian term, and from our side, it is more or less like a borrowed term. You borrowed it from the Persians. Okay. Now, so therefore, the word Hindu doesn't have as such a religious significance, but it is more a geographic name, right? It has more a geographical or demographical term. It is more a geographical or a demographical term or connotations. It doesn't have a religious connotations, because when the Persians were calling people on the other side of the river, other side of the Hindu River, the Hindus, and the religion they practice, the Hinduism, so in that way, these group of people were being identified, and this is the term later on used as a religious community, that is, especially after the anyway, yes, slowly it is taken as a religious terms and a particular group of community. Okay, so now when this Alexander the Greeks also, when they conquered India, you all know how Alexander the Great has a passion to conquer the world. So when he came to India, the term India also seems to have been borrowed from the Greeks. The Greek either it is mispronounced or they call the river Sindhu River as Indus, right? Instead of Sindhu, they call this as Indus. And it is believed that the term India is also derived from the term Indus, right? From borrowed from the Greeks again. Okay. So when the Arabs came to India, right? You all know, right? So when the Arabs came to India somewhere during the medieval period, the Arabs called the people of this land, the people of Hindus, people, the Hindu people, the people who lived in this land as Hindus, they call these people as Hindustan. Stan means place, you all know it very well. So Hindus Kastan, the place of the Hindus. So that's how the term Hindustan is also very much given by the Arabs, but not something that is originated here. So in that way, if we look into the whole terminology, except the term Bharata, okay, except the term Bharata, which we hardly use, the term Hindus, Hindustan, or India, all these terms seems to be a borrowed term, and at the same time, it is not particularly a religious term, but it is more a geographical or demographical connotation to this term. But however, when the Britishers came, and they began to take census, since they started, when the East India Company came, they came as a traders, isn't it? So they came as a traders, but after the East India Company, after British government took over, slowly what happens, they began to they had this ambition of ruling India, and that's how what happens, they begin to take the census of the Indian community, because India community by the time the Britishers came, were introduced with so many multiple religious communities, isn't it? So by the time Hinduism already came, then Islam came with the Arabs, and lastly the Mughals ruled, and from the Mughals took over the Britishers. Now in between again, Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism also were born, right? So all these, so many different religious community were existing in India with different culture and the social system. And notice India again, we have very different culture, even the facials are very different from one another. So therefore what happens, the Britishers begin to take census, and how to divide it and take the census, the only option was for them to do it basing on the religious one uniform religious community. So in that way, what happens, the Hindus, this one particular religious common belief system, we call as Hindus, then Christians, Muslims, is in that way the census were taken. And since that time, actually, the Hindus have purely a religious connotation. It began to have a very purely religious meaning than the geographical connotation that is already forgotten now, right? So it defines a particular religious community who has a common belief, faith, and practices. Okay. Now, if you look into the term, right? If you look into the term, as well as if you look into the Indian philosophy, although Indian philosophy is not included, but I have given a little idea about philosophy, darshana. In Indian term, it is called darshana. And when it comes to darshana, what happens? You will see philosophies, all the philosophies included, right? Now, Indian philosophy was basically before it all happened before BC. It is during BC, not before Christ. So and Christianity was not at all introduced during that time. But however, if we look into the classification of Indian philosophy, you will see both heterodox as well as the orthodox philosophies. Okay, heterodox means those who accept, those who reject Vedas, like Buddhism, Jainism, and orthodox are those who accept Vedas as authoritative. So there are altogether 6 schools Orthodox schools as well as 3 heterodox schools. 3 heterodox schools are the Buddhists, Jainas, and the Charvakas. Charvakas are the atheistic school, purely materialist. Let me not put it atheistic, because there are some atheistic schools even in the Orthodox schools, like Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya school of thought is atheistic. They do not believe in the existence of God, but they are included in the Orthodox schools. At the same time, in the heterodox schools, Jainas and the Buddhas, of course, they do not have such kind of an existence of God, but they believe mostly on the ethical life, moral life. And Charvakas are purely a materialistic schools, no God, no dharma, nothing. But however, all these philosophies, all these various philosophies are included in the Indian philosophy. All right. So this whole inclusion of the varieties of the school of thought itself shows a very broad outlook. You will see pantheism, panentheism, monism, monotheism, polytheism. All these school of thoughts we will find in the Indian philosophy, included in the Indian philosophy. Okay. Okay, so you can see a very broad outlook of the Indian philosophy. So also, if we look into the term Hindu, it is very broad. It doesn't mean only the worship system of the or religious system or belief system of the Aryans. No, it did not confine only to the indigenous people, their practices. No, it is altogether, those people who live there and their practices together, whether it is high, low, or whether it is the indigenous practices or that practices, all these were included in that term Hindu, when this term was coined. Okay, when these terms were used by the Persians. So we can see that it is not narrow, but it is broad, it is secular, it is very, very secular, right? But if we look into the present day Hindutva whole idea and the way some of the Hindu religious as well as the political fanatics or the institutions are emphasizing on Hindutva ideology and changing this whole secular India into a one religious cultural community, I think it is very, very wrong. And I think it is very necessary for them also to look into the whole history of beginning from the term Hindu, as well as their wonderful and the great heritage and the philosophies of Indian philosophies. We can always see that the term Hindu as well as the Indian philosophy always had rooms, have always kept room for others view, others beliefs, others view. They always kept, they were the critic of themselves, right? They were the critic of themselves. So they always had room, even if there is a differences in their views, but they always have room for others' opinion, others' view. And so it is very, very inclusive. But if you look into the present society, I think those inclusive nature and the characteristic is absolutely missed out, and a very harmful and a dangerous fundamental elements are being imposed, because of which the whole secularism of India is under it's under question, and the whole beauty of diversity, of diversity is missed out. So I think in that perspective, okay, in that perspective, if you can look into this topic when I send you the notes, and when you go through the notes, not just simply reading the notes, but if you can open up your mind and bring its implication in the present day situation, present day context, it would be very, very helpful for you. How this meaning of the and the definition of the term Hindu can be challenging or can be a significance in our present day context where our present day government as well as some of the Hindu fundamentalists are imposing the whole Hindutva ideology, one culture, one religion. You know, it is very, very exclusive, isn't it? Right? So in that way, you can always critique. Okay. Now, social and the religious development of the ancient India and the general characteristic of Hinduism through different periods, pre-Vedic, beginning from pre-Vedic. Okay. Okay, I will not go into characteristic of Hinduism because this is a very simple characteristics that I have pointed out, and you can learn, go through it. It is in a very simple form, and nothing much different from what you know. So I will skip this part, but let me pick up this pre-Vedic period. Okay, if you look into pre-Vedic period, that means before the Vedic period, or before the, that means the religion of the Indus Valley civilization. See, of course, the four Vedas, you know, the four Vedas were already was already there codified, and it was only, and we get to have a little bit of ideas about the Vedic period, about the Vedic people, you know, early Vedic, beginning from the early Vedic people, we get to know about their way of life, about their location, about their struggles, about their food habits, everything from particularly from the Vedas, particularly Rig Veda. Okay, tidbits from the Rig Veda, because there is no historical written record of the Aryans or Hinduism as such, right? And because of which Hinduism considered themselves as eternal religion, and Vedas is also considered as eternal book, which has been existing from before. It has been eternal, isn't it? So that is, and therefore Hinduism do not have a founder of its own. Now, I think from the term itself, you can also understand why Hinduism do not have a founder, right? So, because it is a composite culture, it is not an exclusive one particular culture, but it is a composite culture or religious belief system. Maybe that is also one of the reasons why there is no founder for Hinduism as such, because we have Christianity founder, we call it as Jesus Christ. Islam, Prophet Muhammad, right? Jainism, yeah, Mahavira. Of course, there are other Tirthankaras again. Then Buddhism, we have Buddha. Sikhism, Guru Nanak. So all these religions seems to have founder except Hinduism. Now, why they do not have? You can always have that, you know, questions and then and find answers of your own. For me, I see that Hinduism is a composite culture and a religious practice. Maybe that is also one of the reason. Now, so whatever idea or we have regarding the Vedic people is particularly from the Vedas. Vedas was the only source through which we can know how these people live, settled, struggled, and developed. Okay, particularly from Rig Veda. But it was only in 1920s. Okay, only in 1920s, when what happens is some of the archaeologists made research and they found out the Indus Valley and the Mohenjo-daro Harappan civilization, is it not? Right? So you all know Indus Valley civilization, Harappan civilization. So these archaeologists made excavation and they found this civilization and they date it back to the 3rd millennium BCE. That means it is equivalent with the Mesopotamian as well as the Egyptian civilization. And they also found out that it was not just a simple, illiterate or uncivilized barbarians as it is mentioned in the Rig Veda, but the whole civilization, the way it was built and structured, shows that they had a particular religious practice. They have a particular form of religious practice. Their civilization, it was strongly fortified. It was a strongly fortified city. That is what they say. So when we say strongly fortified cities, that means they were also equally civilized like other civilizations, isn't it? So only when the people, so the fortified cities, that means it is a civilized city, right? So that is what through this Harappan excavation, so through these archaeological excavations of this Indus Valley, quite a lot of insights we could draw about the lifestyles and the religious practices of the pre-Vedic people. Now, pre-Vedic people, that means before the Aryans came to this land. All right. As I have mentioned earlier, before the Aryan came to this Indus land, they were an indigenous people who were residing, is it not? Now, as per the Rig Veda, this group of people were labeled as Dasyus or Rakshash, means Rakshash or demons, right? And Dasyus means slaves, and dark complexioned people, inferior people. So these are some of the terms being used to identify these indigenous people. And this itself shows that the Aryans considered themselves an elevated group of people, and the indigenous people as an inferior group of people. And so therefore, in order to divide these two groups, the term Varna is being used. Varna means color, right? Which is a Sanskrit term for caste. Later on, this term is used for caste, right? Caste system, right? So Varna, otherwise Varna means color, okay? So color, so fair complexion people or fair colored people and dark colored people. So these Varnas was used in order to divide this true group or identify this true group of people, all right? And this Varna appears, this term appears in Rig Veda in that sense. Okay, later on we will come to it again. Now, after these excavations were made, of course, there are quite a lot of, there are some similarities with the Rig Veda's documentation, but at the same time, more insights were being came forward about their religious practices. Okay, now as per these excavations, we can see that the pre-Vedic people, they did not have a kind of a structured temples or place of worship. No structure of in the whole process, in the due course, nobody knows how this such a great civilization, how it just kind of vanished. Nobody knows as such, but people can make certain assumptions. All right, but whatever it is, since it was only a few ruins being left, right? If you Google it, you will see the whole picture of the Indus Valley civilization. Now, since there was no such structures and the worship places were discovered during this excavation, so therefore what happens, we cannot have a clear-cut idea of how they used to worship. But however, what we can make certain assumptions is because of the seals, mohor, seal, then copper tablets, then clay ceilings, and some effigies, some figurines on the walls, on the pillars, all right, and some of the art, cutout, sculptures. So through all these only, we can make certain assumptions of how they used to worship and what is their worship life and what was their religious life. Okay. Now, some of the important, not all, few important what do you call findings where like a figurine, a figurine, a female figurine, which is considered to be a female figurine which represents the worship of mother goddess or nature goddess worship, which seems to be representing the nature. Nature seems to be represented by female, or it is a female personification of God, addressed to nature. All right. So, such figurines they can see in some of the seals, as well as some of the on some of the walls and figurines also. This also shows a fertility cult, fertility cult. At the same time, this fertility cult is represented by a female pregnant figurine, women or female pregnant figurine, and there are also women and children, which can be understood as a fertility cult, practice of a fertility cult. And besides this, another very important figurine was a male deity, which is characterized by a very unique type of headgear, a kind of a horned headdress or gear, and which symbolizes a deity possessing, or a person possessing a kind of a supernatural power. And at the same time, this figurine is sitting in a yoga posture, and at the same and around him there are 4 animals. Okay. Now, to these figurines, some of these scholars assume that this is very much the prototype of Shiva, of Hindu god Shiva, who is also known as Pashupati, or it also has a Pashupati aspect. Pashu means beast, right? God of beast. So so some of the scholars finds the similarity, with the and these various aspects. But how far is true, we do not know. But these are the figurines present during that time, and this is conclusive of some of the scholars. At the same time, we can also see these, also were being worshipped and had a very important place in the people religious life, right? Like people tree, and the leaves and the branches also appears in the seals, mohars, those people leaves. So that means what happens, what we can assume is these leaves and this tree is considered to be auspicious or important, and that is the reason it appears in the special thing like seals. At the same time, some of the figurines also shows that certain sacrificial offerings were also offered to these deities by women, standing in line and bringing some offerings. So those kind of artifacts are also visible, and at the same time, the zoomorphic form of clan. Zoomorphic means totems. Some of the tribal, we notice people understand totem very, like we believe in totem, some of the clans comes from certain animals. We have certain lineage or totemic lineage with certain animals, like for example, we Aus, we have Uzukam. You know, one of the clan is known as Uzukam. Uz means bird. Kam means you came out. You know, so that clan, you know, totem is a bird, and that clan seems to have come out of that particular bird. So this totemic lineage is also visible among this pre-Vedic people. Okay, like some of the important animals were totemic animals were bison, rhinoceros, tigers. So these kind of animals you will find in the seals and seals, you know, which shows that they also had a zoomorphic form of clans in their among them. Then Mohenjo-daro bath, that is also one very important element which shows their lifestyles as well as their religious practices. Now, if you look at the Mohenjo-daro bath, it seems to be a one public bath, big area, right? So either that bath may be a public bathing place, or it may also be a place where certain purification rites were being performed. And above that bath, there are certain rooms that that has been there, which some of the scholars believe that it was rooms for the priest, you know. And so some identify it as a purification those baths were used as a to perform the purification rites by the priest. Okay, attached to the Mohenjo-daro bath, there were also granary. Okay, now granary, why would that be? You know, so maybe a certain type of agricultural fertility, you know, cults were also practiced because see, because these people, you know, the pre-Vedic people, they were agricultural people, right? Because they are settled people, they have to live on agriculture. So they need rain, they need the agriculture to be fertile, is not, and to grow so that they can survive. Maybe because of it, because of that, maybe they have this granary attached to the bath, which shows then their interest in the agricultural facility. But however, we can only make assumptions. Okay. So whatever it is, through this existence of bath, we can see that the people, the pre-Vedic people maintained a proper hygiene. At the same time, they had this purification rites, and agricultural seems to be their main source of occupations, because of which they also seems to have had interest in this agricultural fertility cult or rites. Okay. However, when it comes to that people, they used to bury the dead, and there is no, because there is no evidence of any cremation. You know, as today Hindus, they cremate the dead, it's not dead bodies. But during that time, the pre-Vedic people, there is no evidence of cremation. So it is believed that they used to bury the dead. Okay. So this is the basic religious and the social practices of the pre-Vedic people, and how it is similar and how it has influenced the later in Hinduism. It is just an assumptions that can be made. Okay, like for example, the pre-Vedic people, they believe in the mother goddess, you know, which is very much similar with Hindus believe in nature as goddess, you know, mother goddess, goddess of nature. Then this cultic bathing as well as ritual purity also is very much visible in the later Hinduism, where quite a lot of importance is given on the purification rites on various, although it is very complex now, but this element is found in later Hinduism. Then female figurines, then at the same time, the prototype of Shiva, right, in its own Pashupati aspect, you know, is very much similar with the male deity with a very unique type of headgear. Then there is also Philiac worship, that is the linga Paliak emblem, which is found in the Harappan religion also. It's not necessarily exactly the same shape and size, but it is very much similar with the phalas. So it is also which is very much similar with the linga or Paliak emblem that you find in the later Hinduism, which is the symbol, also the symbol of Lord Shiva. Okay, so this is what we can see the culture of the pre-Vedic people and the way it seems to have influenced on the later Hinduism. Okay. Now coming to the Vedic period. Now Vedic period, what happens is if we look into the history, Vedic period is very vast. Right, it's very vast. Let me divide the time period. Maybe you will have a better view at that time in your mind. For example, the Vedic period, the Aryans, the Vedic period, the whole Vedic period can be divided into say 3 parts. Okay, early Vedic period. Okay, early Vedic period, mid Vedic period, and later Vedic period. Okay, so the early Vedic period can be traced back to 1500.
And there is a music in the background. Somebody is playing a
Yes,
music.
yes, I
It
think
is very
somebody.
disturbing.
Yeah, kindly mute yourself. It is disturbing even for me too. Can we find out who is playing the music? I don't know.
Hello, Ramesh Masi. Please mute your mic. Please mute your mic.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, it was quite disturbing, but now I think it's fine. Thank you. Okay, so we shall continue. Yes, so we can divide it into early, mid, and later Vedic period. Now, early Vedic period, the time period, say it is just an approximate, okay? There is no definite time. The scholars has their own version, all right? But however, commonly accepted is from, say, 1500, okay, to 1000 BCE, all right, early Vedic period. Then comes the mid Vedic period from 1000 to again the whole expansion and this one up to say 600. Okay, then you will see the later Vedic period from say 6 to 5, 10 till the letter that is say AD, up to the Bhakti movement, right? So by the time AD, it comes under AD now. So up to the Bhakti movement can be classed as the later Vedic period. Okay, so the ancient period, that means the early Vedic period, the whole system, there is a whole lot of transition that has taken place from the early Vedic period, mid Vedic period, and the later Vedic period. Okay, so there is a lot of transition that has taken place in this whole period time. So therefore, we cannot look Vedic period under one head. Okay, it has to be divided, right? So let us look into the early Vedic period first, right? And slowly how it developed in its complexities. Okay, so early Vedic period, if we say, then you will find basically the Rig Veda as the main source of information. As we all know, there is no history being written history of the whole development of Hinduism, but what we have as a source is the Vedas as well as the Harappan and the Harappan civilization, Indus Valley excavations. Okay, now as per the early Vedic period, right, we can see from the Rig Veda that the people, of the early Vedic people were very, very simple, right? So when it comes, see, it starts with the Aryans coming and settling in this land, or Hindu Kush land, we call it, right, under the foothills of Himalaya. Okay, under the foothills of Himalaya, these Aryans came and settled, and according to the Rig Veda, this Aryans seems to have a constant struggle with the indigenous people, the already settled people, whom they called as Dasyus, and they were aliens for each other, right? And the Aryans seems to have constant conflict with the indigenous people, and this Aryans seems to have sought the help of Lord Indra. Lord Indra was considered to be the god of Aryans, and his weapon, like lightning, thunder, is considered to be the weapon of Lord Indra. And with the help of Lord Indra only, it seems the Aryans were able to defeat the indigenous people, and they were subdued as Rakshas, or they were subdued as slaves in the Aryan's household. All right. So that is what you will find in the Rig Veda when it comes to their locations and their whole differences. They were dark complexion people, as mentioned. When it comes to the social life, the Aryans slowly began to rule the land, and they began to all the manual works were done by the indigenous people. And see, the Aryans, being a wanderer, their main occupation was cattle rearing. Occupation, in a sense, they survive with cattle rearing. Wherever they go with the cattle and the whole baggage, behind, just like the Abraham and his whole household. So cattle rearing was their main chief wealth for the Aryans as a what do you call, as a wanderers, and therefore there were also a lot of prayers and praises, simple prayers and praises were being addressed to God called Pushan. And it is said that this Pushan god is a god of cattle, okay, who blesses the cattle. So in that way, actually, these Aryans, quite a lot of hymns were being addressed to the Lord Pushan. At the same time, Indra also plays a very important role in the Rig Veda. Lord Indra seems to have a central place in the Rig Veda, because the Aryans were constantly offering prayers and simple sacrifices to Indra for help in order to defeat the indigenous people. Now, slowly, as the Aryans settled in this land, they began to live an agricultural life. Now, agriculture became the chief occupations. And they began to what do you call, agriculture, then elephant, taming the elephants, cows, and all those were their main source of food, as well as source of life, and doing their things. Now, okay, then Soma is also very popular, because Indra seems to be very fond of Soma juice, which is known to be intoxicating. So this Soma plants, or it seems during that time it was readily found in the Himalayan mountains, right? So this plant were also prayers and praises were offered to Soma, plant. So out of that plant, they extract juice and they offer it to Lord Indra while worshipping. So the Soma also became a kind of a god. So you will see a kind of an animistic type of worship slowly being developed, okay, among the Aryans. Clear? Now, at the same time, Agni has always been there. Maybe, see, in Persia, Zoroastrianism was very popular. And when it comes to Zoroastrianism, Agni worship, fire worship was very, very popular. Fire temples, huge fire temples you will find in Persia. Right now, when the Aryans were coming, maybe they were also very much conditioned and influenced by all these cultures, maybe. So when the Aryans came, the worship of Agni was very much inherent in them when they came to this land. So you will also find that Agni also played a very important role in the life of the Aryans, okay, in the Rig Veda. Now, when it comes to economy also, they seems to be doing pretty well when it comes to economy, like carpentry, navigations, were quite common during that time. Now, government also, see, slowly, the Aryans, as I have mentioned, they began to expand in population as well as in territory. Now, as they were expanding in territory, they cannot, one person cannot rule the whole land. Slowly, a kind of a village or chieftain type of system was developed, and ultimately a kind of a monarchical type of government was slowly established. All right. So during that time, what happens? During that time, what happens? The Aryans, since they have already subdued the indigenous people, now they are no longer their enemies now, right? They are now already tamed. Now the Aryans became the enemies of one another, because as a chieftains, as a village chieftains, what happens is they always fight amongst each other, basing on boundary, basing on security, in all the various sorts of reasons. So because of which, what happens? Their whole focus were now changed. Then coming to their religious life, in Rig Veda, in the early Vedic life, you will see that a large number of people were engaged in sacrificial work, but the sacrificials were not so complex. It was a simple performance of sacrifices and prayer, which can be performed even by the householder, in a sense, by the husband. And in the absence of the husband, the son, or sometimes even the wife, can perform the sacrifices. So at the same time, there were also quite a lot of poets and seers being developed. Okay, and among the poets and seers, there were also female poets and seers. And one very prominent woman was Ghosha. She was a lady seer, and she seems to have a very high esteem and reputation during during that time in the early Vedic period. And even in Rig Veda, some of the hymns were composed by this Ghosha. Her hymns and her hymns, her contributions also were included in the Rig Veda, right? And in the early Vedic period, there was no class distinction, or there is no caste distinction as such as we find in Hinduism. Now, one of the basic characteristic of Hinduism is caste system, is it not, right? So that is a very distinctive characteristic of Hinduism. But in the early Vedic period, caste system was not visible at all. Besides the word varna, varna appears, but in the form of color. Okay, color differences. All right. But however, in the later, slowly, slowly as the territory expanded, population expanded, government form of government expanded, their focus, interest shifted to their own village, for the neighboring villages. What happens is, and since their hobby also became more of a battle, going to war, battle was one of their chief hobby, interest. And coming out victory was something to be very, very proud of. So because of which, a certain group of people, a certain group of people or group of people were formed who were specialized in warfare, okay, who were specialized in warfare, who were specialized in protecting and safeguarding the territory from their enemies. So this group of people were known as Kshatriyas. Okay, this group of people were known as Kshatriyas. Now, when the kings and these warriors go to war, always what happens? They were sent off with a prayer, with some sacrifices, with some pujas being done. Okay, and these sacrifices and these prayers were being done by certain group of people, and whom they call as Brahmins. So slowly, what happens? Kshatriyas and Brahmins were also made place in the social as well as the religious life of the Vedic people. Do you understand? In this way, actually, the Brahmins as well as the Kshatriya group of people also made a important place in the social and the religious life of the Vedic people. All right. So we cannot do life with Kshatriyas without king. How the kingdom will survive? So in that way, actually, they began to have their own prominence. All right, but not in the form of caste as such and the evil that is attached, but in the form of profession. All right, in the form of profession. Okay, so in the early Vedic period, what happens? They were in Rig Veda. You will see some 33 gods being recognized as very, very important. God of heaven, God of earth, God of storm, rain, fire, had found prominence. And all these gods, you can see that all these gods were attached to the natural, attached to nature. See, it is because of the nature that humans sustain. The sustenance of human life depends upon nature. It all comes from nature only, and therefore, depending upon the needs, the Aryans also, the Vedic people, they were not stupid as well as foolish. They had their own inquisitive mind. They begin to think, as they begin to live. See, agricultural life is not easy. It's difficult, isn't it? So they need to work hard all day. They need to rest at night so that they can be energized the next day. So what happens is slowly they begin to have night god, day god, night god Mitra. So the day god, night god, moon god that gives light, at night. Sun god, that is very, very important for human as well as vegetation, sunlight, isn't it? So moon god, sun god, sky that covers, the whole universe. Sky, then Indra, then fire, storm, rain. So these are the various gods that develop, giving all seems to have been developed from the forces of nature, which were very, very important for human sustenance. So we can see that all these varieties of deities and the rituals attached to them seems to have developed basing on the seeds 11 or life situation of that of the people of that time. Okay, basing on the life situation and the struggles, all these varieties of worshipping varieties of God developed, and accordingly rituals were also attached to these gods. But however, rituals and offerings were all very, very simple. Okay, so in early Vedic people, what happens? We can also see sacrificing cow. Now, cow is very auspicious for the Hindus today, isn't it? But in the early Vedic people, among the early Vedic people, cow were also used for sacrifices as well as food, among them. That is what we see in their documentations. All right, and Yagya, I will not go much in detail because these are very, very simple. So in a nutshell, in just a couple of sentences, we can see that the early Vedic people, their life, their thinking were very simple. Okay, their social lives were also, the social and the religious life were also very simple. There was never, the whole idea of caste and the purity, pollution. All these were not present during the early Vedic period. The sacrifices also were simple. The rituals were also simple,
नहीं नहीं
and it's
पंजाबी
simple. It was so
हिंदी का है
simple
नहीं
that
पंजाबी
even
है
a simple householder,
पंजाबी ला जाओ
wife, as well as children, the son can also perform those rites. Okay, so but slowly as the time passed, there are certain complexities that has been incorporated. When the worship of God also slowly a kind of a polytheism also developed. That polytheism also is very much not exactly polytheism. I would rather say animism. Animism, you know, several forces of nature were being worshipped as God, a kind of an anthropomorphic, concept developed, were attached to the forces of nature, and they began to worship those forces. Okay, so it was very simple. And when it comes to women also seems to have enjoyed certain privileges and rights, right? Unlike the present day Hindu woman. So even poets, seers were also women, even during that time. Okay, so and you can always visualize the importance of poets and seers in the king's court. You know, they seems to have very prominent places. So likewise, you can see, although it was a patriarchal system, you know, patriarchy. It was patriarchy means where male child is given importance. It is a male-dominated society. Male is considered as the most important and important figure in the family as well as the society. Or male-dominated society is known as patriarchal society or patriarchy, where women do not have a place. Okay, so in early Vedic period also, it was a patriarchal society where male dominated and male child was always given importance. But however, you know, it is nowhere mentioned that female child were not given importance. Okay, male child was preferred, but female child also were given equal importance. And when it comes to education, worship, sacrifices, female, you know, women were also given equal, if not equal, but almost a similar status and prominence. Okay, they were also given equal privileges when it comes to education. All right. So you will not see much of deprivation in the early Vedic period. Okay. Now coming to the Brahmana period or the mid Vedic period. Okay, Brahmana period will be considered as a mid Vedic period. I would rather say, I will not go much in detail, just points I will say. Now, Brahmana period, I would rather say the older complexities, or in the very slang Hindi, we can say all the kacharas. Okay, all the kacharas, social, religious kacharas entered in Brahmana period. All right. Of course, there are certain developments that has been made, but in the mid-Vedic period, what happens? So much of complexities develop when it comes to social life. Also, in the Brahmana period, you know, this whole caste system was distinctly developed. 1 minute. After I complete the Hinduism, I'll give you time if you have any questions in all this, through all the lectures that we have covered. So what happens is the caste system become very distinctly developed during the Brahmana period, and not only distinctly developed, okay, not only distinctly developed, along with the caste system, the evils, the whole concept of purity and pollution was also very much attached. All right. See, caste system is not a problem as such. If we see, Mahatma Gandhi also strongly supported caste system, isn't it? Caste system in a sense of dividing the whole society into its own trade, society basing on the specialization of your own trade. The society would be developed. In that way, what happens? The society can function very systematically. In that way, in that sense, caste system is good. But when the whole idea of purity and pollution is attached, that is where the problem lies. Okay. So in that way, what happens? There are certain group of people who are privileged. There are certain group of people who are underprivileged and who are marginalized. They are the marginalized people whom we call as Dalits. Okay, so the whole purity and pollution concept, when it is attached to caste system, that gives an evil turn to whole caste system. And in the Brahmana period, this whole idea of purity and pollution was attached to the caste system. All right, now, and accordingly, so many do's and don'ts, rights were attached. All right. Now, and when it comes to religious life, the sacrifices and the performance of sacrifices became so important, like so important that at times God seems to be secondary, and sacrifices seems to precede God. Like for example, if you give the sacrifices as the priest have demanded, then your prayers will be answered by God. If you do not bring the sacrifices as it is demanded, depends upon the sacrifice, not on God to answer or to receive blessings or to answer your prayer, right? So, to that much of importance, sacrifices was given during that time, and along with sacrifices, so many rituals, do's and don'ts, and it became so complex. Okay, it became so complex that even a priest could not go around and perform their yagyas or sacrifices without a manual, so rig sama yajo, yeah, Yajur Veda became the handbook of the priest. They have to flip through the books to see what mantras to be read and what to be said. Okay, so in that way it became so complex. Now during Brahmana period again, the place of a priesthood, the office of priesthood, sacrifices became so prominent that the priests and the kshatriyas began to have constant what do you call disagreement, see, everything is dependent upon us. You are able to get victory all because of us performing the sacrifices and pujas for you. So therefore, our positions should be always the highest. Now, otherwise, it is the Kshatriyas, the king, who rules the country, the kingdom, isn't it? So the Kshatriya always holds the high position. So during the end of the mid-Vedic period, it was conclusive that in written form, the top, the highest caste would be the Brahmins. But when it comes to running of the government, when it comes to the governments, the Kshatriya will be at the top, and under Kshatriyas, the rest of the people will always be their subject. That means under Kshatriyas only, the priests are also the subject of their king. The priest, the Kshatriya, the priests are also the subject of a Kshatriya or the king. The kings are the Kshatriyas, isn't it? So in that way, this agreement was settled among these two community, among these two castes. Okay, right? So the whole Brahmana period characteristic, I have put it in the notes. So this is just a highlight that I have given. All right. Now, the later Vedic period. The later Vedic period can be classified as can be marked by the development of Shramana movement. Shramana means ascetic movements, all right? Ascetics, or another word is heterodox movements, all right? So with the development of Shramana movement, we embark into the end of mid-Vedic period and the beginning of the later Vedic period. See, with all these complexities, the society became very, very cumbersome. All right, the society became very cumbersome. The life, social and the religious life, seems to be very, very superficial. Very, very superficial. So so it was all very, very complex. Whether it is religious, whether it is social life, seems to be so complex and cumbersome. Some of the people were fed up, and they begin to question. They begin to think. In order to reach God, do we really need to go through all these sacrifices, through all these priests? Can't we mediate by ourselves? Can't we find truth of life. What happens to life? What happens after we die? You know, so there were so many metaphysical questions that were that disturbs the mind of the people, right? And they wanted to search the truths of all these questions that were disturbing them. And as long as they were in the society, you know, which is so much tight, they find themselves in a watertight container, you know, with all these rituals and the superficial life, right? So therefore, quite a lot of people left the place and went and spent time in wilderness, in the jungles, all right, where they can find peace and they can meditate upon the questions that is disturbing their mind, right? And in all this process, you know, in all this process, a movement sort of developed, right? And this movement was known as Shramana movement. And among the Shramana movements are the Buddhists, Jainas, and the Upanishad also. Okay, so these were the reaction movements. Counter reaction movements of whom? Of the Brahmanical, what do you call, system. There, of the counter reaction of the Brahmanical system, where they were giving importance to the hierarchy, you know, of caste, where a lot of importance were given to rituals, rites, purity, pollution. Okay, so counter reaction to all these lifestyles and practices and belief system, the Shramana, the ascetic movements developed. And the ascetic movements are the Buddhists, Jainas, and Upanishad also comes under. And along with it, the Bhagavad Gita also comes in. But Bhagavad Gita is not an ascetic movement, but it is a counter-reaction movement. All right, now the Shramana means ascetic life. So ascetic life means those people who renounce the world, who renounce the society and live their life in tapasya, okay, in meditation, yoga, right? So this kind of life they live, and they were in search of truths, of various truths of life, right? I will not explain much, okay? I hope you are able to understand up to this, okay? So this shamanic tradition, they advocated an absolute renunciation, and they believe in a very rigorous asceticism in order to find liberation and bondage from samsara, or bondage from this world. Okay, so they lead an ascetic life far away from the Brahmanical hierarchy, Brahmanical system and practices. All right, so they also challenge the Vedas. Okay, they challenge the Vedas and the importance or efficacy of the animal sacrifices, and they advocated. Okay, they advocated a life of meditation, right? A life of meditation, and a life of meditation, or a life of what do you call, renunciation, as an alternative to sacrifices. Do you understand? Instead of sacrificing or animals and killing animals, you know, live a life of asceticism. You will reach God. Right? Live an ethical life instead of following the rites and rituals, you know, as an alternative to the Brahmanical rites and rituals. They advocated a life of what do you call, meditation, right? An ethical life, good way of life, moral life, you know, that will give you salvation, that will lead you to moksha or nirvana. Okay, so they began to challenge the authority of Vedas, and they rejected Vedas, and they developed their own philosophy. Okay, they developed their own philosophy and their own ethical way of life and their own scripture. Do you understand? Okay, so these two groups of people were the Jainas as well as the Buddhas. All right, Buddhists and the Jainas. Now, these are the heterodox groups who rejected the Vedas and the Vedic culture and formulated their own religious practices, belief system, and scripture. All right. Now, on the other hand, there were also another Shramana movement. See, there were hundreds and hundreds of Shramana movements. But in the due course of time, these movements vanish, disappear, right? But only Jainas and the Buddhists survived and it was carried on. Until today, we find its existence all over the world. All right. There are various reasons for which we are not looking into it because those are in depth. All right. I will not waste your time much on that. Now, on the other hand, okay, on the other hand, there were also another Shramana movements, okay, ascetic movement, all right, who lived or who were within the Brahmanical culture and within the Brahmanical structure, but they gave a philosophical outlook to it. Do you understand? They did not reject the Vedas. They accepted the Vedas as authoritative scripture, their base. But they begin to understand the Vedic teachings from the philosophical point of view, or in other words, let me put it, the Vedas, they gave a philosophical foundation. They gave a philosophical foundation to the whole Vedic teachings and practices. All right. And that is known as, and all those findings, all those answers to the queries, came into form as Upanishad. I believe you know what Upanishad is, all right? So it is a huge volume of book, religious book, which purely comprises on philosophical entities, all right? Philosophical inquiries, clear? Or metaphysical questionings and answers, all right? Now this Vedic, in Upanishad, right? In Upanishad, there are basic I will not go in detail, but just a bird eye view of some of the new concepts that developed in Upanishad, right? Because, with the endeavors made by some seers, okay, seers or rishis, in their search for truths of life or realities. Okay, so the whole in the Upanishad, you will see for the first time, they have developed a concept of God, one Godhead, the concept of supreme or one Godhead or unity of Godhead, whom they address as Brahman. So the existence of Brahman developed in Upanishad. So in one way, we can see that up to the Brahmanical period, there were different gods. By that time, around 300 gods have already developed. Okay, so what happens is the seers begin to think so many gods are existing. Who are they? Is there any god who is above them all, controlling? Otherwise, how would these gods function? Right? So is there a Godhead? To that question, they came up with an answer that yes, there is a supreme God or head whom they call as Brahman, and he is an impersonal, unknowable, untouchable, with he is a transcendent God, right? And this Brahman is a supreme spirit, supreme soul. All right, this Brahman is the supreme spirit, is the supreme soul, and it is the Brahman only that exists and nothing else exists. There is only one reality in this universe. All right, there is only one reality in this universe, and that is Brahman. Tat Tvam Asi, Aham Brahma Asmi. These were the very prominent concept that developed. Aham Brahma Asmi. I am the Brahman. I am the Brahman. I only exist. Tat Tvam Asi. Everything is in me. I only exist. Everything is in me. So these are the strong concepts that develop in the Upanishadic period. And for the first time, we can see a monotheistic element in Hinduism. Present day, we call it as Hinduism, is it not? So in the Indian philosophy, first time we can see that a monotheistic concept of God being developed during that time. All right. Now, regarding humans, all right, human, we live, and then we die. After death, what happens to the body? It's very non-invisible. It is turned to dust, right? And does our life end? If it is so, then it is so short, right? Because human life is very important, right? And does it exist beyond that? So ultimately the whole concept of soul also developed. Yes, human exists not in body but in the form of soul, and every human being, every living thing has a soul. So the whole concept of soul, existence of soul, also developed in the Upanishad. And what is the nature of this soul? According to the Upanishad, Upanishadic seers, they developed that God, Brahman, Brahman is the supreme soul, and the Jiva, human soul, Atman, in a small letter A, Atman, is the micro form of God, Brahman. It is a micro form of Brahman, So in every living thing, there is soul, all right? And it is this soul is the micro form of God. And that means in every humanity, there is divinity residing, right? And this divinity is not realized because of our attachment to the world, our ignorance. Therefore, in philosophy, main goal is that see the self. Darshana itself means see the self. You need to see your intrinsic nature, which is divine. You need to realize that. Okay. Once you realize your intrinsic nature, you will be led. And that is moksha. That is the state of liberation. That is what Upanishad proposes, and the Indian philosophy, that's main goal and focus is also the same. All right. So the whole concept of soul also developed. So unity of Atman and Brahman, unity of soul. Our soul and Brahman is the ultimate goal of human life. Okay, should be the ultimate goal, or is the ultimate goal of human life. Okay, then comes the whole concept of soul. Now, what happens to the soul? Now, we are living in this world. Some are wicked, some are good. Now, how are we going to judge? Who is going to judge? So if they do not, Hindus somehow do not believe in God as judge. Like we Christians, we believe in God. On the last day, God is going to judge us. Good and bad will be separated, right? But Hindus do not have such kind of concept, does not appear in Hinduism. But the whole understanding that, so the whole understanding of the law of karma, moral order, the concept of moral order, existence of a moral order developed. There is a moral order which exists by itself. It works, it exists by itself, and basing on this moral order only, that means basing on our karma, our action only, our destiny will be made. All right, our destiny will be fixed. So in that way, what happens? So what happens to the life of the wicked or bad karmas being accumulated? So they believe, so the whole concept of karma samsara developed. Karma, samsara, develop. Karma means action. Samsara means coming back to this world again. So depending upon your karma. So the whole concept is every human beings are in bondage. Right? Every human beings are in bondage. And this bondage is because of the ignorance of
Ma'am,
our own self. Okay.
madam,
So
can you
once
please
we
refresh your screen? Ma'am, can you please refresh your screen? It is stuck at the page number 5.
okay. No, this topic is over. Of course, I am dealing with Upanishads. Maybe I will put it like this. Okay, meaning of the Upanishads. All these lectures, I am going to give you notes. So for that, do not worry. Okay, I'll send you all these notes. Just try to be attentive and then just listen to what I'm saying. It will be all be jumbled up, but once you get to the notes, I think it will be systematically. You can follow and develop your ideas. All right. So okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Now, is it okay now? So we are coming exactly to the point, the law of karma. Okay. So the whole concept, the twin concept of law of karma and the doctrine of transmigration, that means karma, samsara, develop. So every human beings are in bondage, right? Bondage what? Coming back to this world again and again in a cycle of birth and rebirth is considered to be bondage. All right. And our duty and the Vedas, or Upanishads or Vedas has come up with certain do's and don'ts through which we can live our life and break the cycle of birth and rebirth. And once we break this cycle of birth and rebirth, what happens is our soul can find its intrinsic nature, that is Brahman. That means unity with the Brahman, oneness with the Brahman is the ultimate goal. Okay, so the whole concept of law of karma and the transmigration developed in the was fully developed in the Upanishad. Okay, now comes the now. Okay, now how to break the cycle of birth and rebirth? What is the path? Okay, so Upanishadic sages have come up, have found out or come up with the way that acknowledge the Jnana Marga, path of knowledge. Jnana Marga as the way out to way out from this cycle of birth and rebirth. Okay, now in Upanishad also teaches the concept of asceticism. In fact, rigorous asceticism, way of life of asceticism is always upholded and always highly esteemed. Okay, so ascetic life is considered to be the very, very ideal way of life. All right. So these are some of the basic concepts that develop in Upanishad. Do you understand? And basing on this Upanishadic concept, various philosophical schools of thought also developed. Various Indian philosophical schools of thought, like the Jainas and Buddhas school of thought also is very much based upon these philosophical concepts that develop. Like, for example, concept of law of karma and some karma samsara, law of karma, all these are the inherent and the very important concepts that rules Jaina's teaching as well as Buddha's teaching, right? Concept of liberation, moksha, nibbana, these are some of the important concepts that you will find dominating Buddha's and the Jaina's teaching. All right. So in the Indian, even Saddarshana, all the 6 darshanas, Indian Orthodox schools like Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Samkhya, Advaita, Yoga, Advaita, and Mimamsa. These are the 6 Orthodox schools. And all these 6 Orthodox schools are also very much founded on the Upanishadic teaching. Right? But of course, it has its own variation in interpretations and importance being given. Right? Okay. Okay. Up to here, I hope that your scriptures, Smriti and the Shruti scriptures, Shrutis are the Vedas, That means Shruti comes from the root word shru. Shru means to hear. Okay, to hear. So here, Vedas, only the Vedas comes under, all the 4 Vedas comes under Shruti. That means directly heard from God by the seers. Okay, directly heard from God by the seers, and the whole Vedas was formed. So this Vedas is considered to be eternal and very, very sacred. Okay, now the Smriti literature, Smra means to remember. Okay, Smra means to remember. So, and this, all the Smriti literatures are interpreted, are the teachings that is being interpreted by the sages and scholars. All right, and these Smriti literatures are also very much in line with the Vedic teachings. Okay, so under Smriti literatures comes the Dharma Shastra. Dharma Shastra, that means the law book of life or ethical book of life. Okay, so it is a thick volume. After Dharma Shastra comes the Itihas, the Ramayana, Mahabharata also comes under the Smriti literature. Then Ramayana, Mahabharata, then the epics, that is the epics. Then Samskaras also comes under Smriti literature. Then Bhagavad Gita also comes under the Smriti literature. All right. So all these literatures are comes under the Smriti literatures. All right. Now, besides the others, I want to pick up only Bhagavad Gita, which can be very, very important. Now, Bhagavad Gita, as I said, it is a counter-reaction movement, all right, of the Vedic culture as well as some of the Upanishadic teachings. All right. Now, Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavad Gita, you can see the whole social atmosphere being changed. Right. Now, up to the Brahmana period, you will see the priest playing a central role in the whole social setup, social as well as the religious settings. All right. But in Bhagavad Gita, see, when I say Bhagavad Gita, I believe that you know that Bhagavad Gita is basically a discussion that has taken place with Krishna and Arjuna before the great battle Mahabharata was formed, isn't it? So this Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita, in fact, comes after in the whole volume of Mahabharata. You know, it comes in the last few discourses, you know, or in the last part of the Mahabharata actually. So the whole discussion, after the whole discussions between Arjuna and Krishna, when Arjuna was not willing to fight the battle, all right, not willing to fight the battle, Krishna was insisting him and telling him why he need to fight the battle, you know, fight the battle. So this whole discussion and convincing Arjuna to fight and fulfill his dharma, you know, comprises the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita. But if we look from the historical point of view, there are certain elements that we can see, right? That only I will be pointing out. So as a counter-reaction movement, we can see that in Bhagavad Gita, unlike the Upanishad, you know, unlike the Upanishad, see, in Upanishad, it is only Jnana Marga, you know, Jnana Marga as the only path to salvation, isn't it? So if it is Jnana Marga as the only path of salvation, that means only few people can follow that path. Like Jnana, from where you will know the knowledge of God? By reading the scripture, that is Vedas. Then who can read the scripture? Only the Brahmins and a few Kshatriyas can read the scripture, right? Not all the Kshatriyas, that means not all the soldiers, only the kingly, you know, high royal caste, they can read the scripture. The rest are not even allowed to come near the scripture, right? So that means the majority of population, for them, there is no salvation. If that is the only path for salvation, right? So therefore, in against this teaching, Bhagavad Gita comes up with a new teaching that salvation is for all and it can be reached by all. So therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, you will see a beautiful synthesis of bhakti, jnana, bhakti, and karma marga. Marga means path, path to salvation, paths to salvation, through jnana. Yes, jnana is an elevated path. Not everyone can follow, and if you are able to follow, well and good, correct? But that is not all. You can, if you are not able to follow the jnana marga, follow the path of bhakti, devotion, living a devotional life, focusing your mind and heart to God and living your life. But it is not easy, and not everyone also can follow. Now, if you are not able to follow this bhakti marga, follow the path of karma. Like, for example, the Shudras, basically they are in the social standing, they always do the minimal jobs, they are the lowest caste. So whatever you do, that is what Krishna was also explaining to Arjuna, do not think of the consequence. Do not think of the consequence. Do it because it is your duty to do, right? As a Shudra, what is your duty? Your duty is to serve the people. So you serve it, you serve it, you serve the people. You dedicate your work, your action to God, as if you are serving God, you serve, you dedicate your action to God and you fulfill your duty. That itself will lead you to salvation. All right, so these are the three paths of liberation or salvation that that Bhagavad Gita proposes, and you will find a beautiful synthesis in throughout the chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so in that way, Bhagavad Gita proposes salvation for all, and everyone can attain salvation if only you dedicate your action to God, or you have a one-pointed mind and focus to God, and if only you read the Vedas and experience and have the knowledge of God. Okay, so that is the reason one unique contribution of Bhagavad Gita to action, action is the niskama karma. Niskama karma. Ni means negation, no, right? Ni means negation in Sanskrit. Kama is desire. Okay, kama is desire. Karma is action. So desireless action, or fruitlessness action, or desireless action. I think that would be more understandable. Desireless action. You do your duty because it is your duty, it is your faith, it is your faith and belief, right? Without any thought for the consequence, without any thought for the fruits, what you will get in return. No, without that kind of kama, desire. No, that is why it is called niskama karma, desireless action. So this is one very important as well as a unique contribution that Bhagavad Gita has contributed to the Indian philosophy. All right. Besides that, there are also some more, but and at the same time in Bhagavad Gita, it also proposes kind of equality, and if you look into the social background, far away from the Brahmanical period where the priest played a central role, you will see that in Bhagavad Gita, the king's court, battlefield, royalty, these are the prominent, this played a prominent role in the whole social setting, right? Even along with the kings, the queens also seems to have played important role in the whole social system and the family life also, right? Okay, so that is what we can see, a huge transition in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, right? Then, so when you are reading the notes of this Bhagavad Gita, I want you to read from the perspective of caste system, equality, okay? At the same time, caste system, equality, keeping that in mind, if you can read then it will be very, very helpful for you. The implications of Bhagavad Gita's teachings, to the present day situation of caste system, all right, to the present day situation of marginalization of certain group of people, whether it is women or whether it is Dalits or whether it is, or the lower caste people. Okay, so from that perspective, if you can read the Bhagavad Gita, it will be very, very helpful for you. All right. Now comes, I don't think I have missed out anything. Now comes the teachings of Ramanuja and Shankaracharya. See, Shankaracharya and Ramanuja, these were the prominent philosophers of their time. Okay, and their philosophies are considered today as a standard form of philosophy, and their philosophies, these are the Indian philosophers, isn't it? Their philosophies, their thoughts, their doctrines that they have developed, okay, basing on Vedas. So their thoughts are also till date are used as a framework in order to build Indian Christian theology. All right, are you able to understand? Right, this Advaita Vedanta, Shankaracharya or Shankara's philosophy is known as Advaita Vedanta. Okay, Shankara's philosophy is known as Advaita Vedanta, and Ramanuja's philosophy is known as Vishishta Advaita Vedanta. Vishishta Advaita Vedanta. Okay, and these two philosophies are considered to be the standard form of philosophies, and these two, their philosophies are used as a framework, as a framework to build Indian Christian theology, right? Okay, now when we say theology, basically we follow Western theology. Systematic theology is basically Western theology, isn't it? So therefore, this Christian theology, this Christian theology at times are very much difficult to be understood by the Indian minds. You don't see any Indianness. Therefore, many a times Indian Christians are also considered as foreigners, because not only their outlook, their whole idea, concepts, theology, everything is foreign. Nothing of Indianness is there. Therefore, Indian theologians felt that it is very necessary for us to build an Indian Christian theology, all right, where theology will be very much, Christian theology will be very much Indian. It will be built and founded on the Indian philosophy, and it will have so that it will be very much understandable to the Indian minds, and it will be Indians. It will be not something borrowed from the West. Okay, so in order to build that Indian theology, Indian Christian theology, you need a framework, isn't it? Indian philosophy framework. So for that, what happens? They use particularly the Vedanta philosophies, particularly Advaita Vedanta and Vishishta Advaita Vedanta, right? Like theologians, I do not know whether you are aware or not, theologians like A.J. Appasamy, M.M. Thomas, right? A.J. Appasamy, M.M. Thomas, Chakaria, Chanchaya, right? These are all P.D. Devanandan, right? So these are all Indian Christian theologians, and they have used their philosophies, Shankara and Ramanuja's philosophy as their base in order to build Indian Christian theology, or their this one. All right. Anyway, so you know the importance of Shankara and Ramanuja. I have the notes, but I will not go much in detail as such. Now, Shankara's theology or Shankara's philosophy is very much similar. Okay, Shankara's philosophy is very much same, not very much similar to the Upanishadic teaching. In fact, Shankara did not omit or criticized anything of Upanishad. Rather, he has taken everything, the jnana aspect, the philosophical aspect of Upanishad. Now, Shankara has taken the philosophical aspect of Upanishad as it is, and rather he has further elaborated it. He has further elaborated or reinterpreted it without any changes. Now, Upanishadic concepts, you know it very well, since we have already discussed, isn't it? The same thing is what Shankara also advocated, right? So that is, there is only one reality, right? Only one reality, that is only God, the Brahman exists and nothing exists. All the world that we see are all an illusion, right? The world with all its varieties are all illusion and nothing else. All right, now clear? So only one reality exists, and we also believe, and that reality he calls it as Nirguna Brahman. Nirguna means all transcendent, transcendent God, all in, and it is the Nirguna Brahman is so big and huge and wide that he is addressed with negation. He is unknowable, right? Nasty, right? Yeah, he is unknowable, indescribable. Okay, so the whole understanding of Nirguna Brahman cannot be compartmentalized by saying that God is so and so, God is so and so, right? So when we say God is truth, he is just compartmentalized in that concept, right? So when we understand him without compartmentalization or in negation, he is not this, he is not that. For example, a pen, this pen is say for example thin. Now I cannot think of this pen beyond thin, is it not? I cannot think of this pen without beyond thin, because I am saying it is thin. But if I say this pen is not thin, if I say this pen is not thin, everyone can think of this pen in so many different ways. Like this pen is not thin, this pen is not long, this pen is not wide, this pen is not so and so and so and so. Right? It is not compartmentalized. You have room to think of God in your own way, with your own definition, with your own understanding and experiences. Okay, so that kind of Nirguna Brahman is projected in Advaita by Shankara. All right, now, and besides that, the rest are all almost the same. The difference with the Vishishta Advaita. Vishishta Advaita, according to Ramanuja, is, see, Ramanuja is very much Advaita Vedanta. But he says that Vishishta means particular or qualified. No, Shankara's is monism, one reality. Mono means one, isn't it? So Shankara's is monism, one reality exists. And Vishishta Advaita is qualified monism. That monism is qualified. Vishishta Advaita. All right. How it is qualified? No. So Ramanuja is saying, yes, Brahman is the only reality. But the world as it is in all its variety also exists. We cannot deny it. It also exists. No, all this world in difference, right, may not be as real as Brahman, but they are also real. These are all a manifestation of God. So therefore, manifestation of Brahman. Okay, manifestation of Brahman. So therefore, his philosophy is known as qualified monism or Vishishta Advaita. Okay, just 1 minute. So for Ramanuja, he has given equal importance to the Nirguna as well as the Shaguna aspect. That means Shaguna is the personal aspect of God. In Advaita Vedanta, Shaguna aspect is considered to be an inferior form of God. Okay, but in Ramanuja's school of thought, Shaguna aspect is also equally given importance. See, the world as we see is also real, and the Shaguna aspect of God is very much inherent in it. All right. So the Shaguna aspect of God can be reached through devotion, through what do you call? Through a self-surrendering devotion to God, and this Shaguna aspect of God is also very much a part of the Brahmana. That means part of the Nirguna God. All right. God is not only, it is, of course, Nirguna aspect is unreachable, unknowable, but it is so distant, so far, isn't it? So what Ramanuja is proposing is that along with the world that we see, which is real, the Nirguna aspect of God is very much in this, attached, indwelling in this world, and God is reachable. No, the God is reachable, Brahman is reachable through this Shaguna God. Okay, so he has given a lot of importance to prasada, and that is self-surrendering devotion to God, because God is very much reachable. God is very much, we can very much relate with God. So this is the unique contribution of Ramanuja, all right, to the Indian philosophy. All right. So I think that is all we have covered, and various sector towards the end, towards later on, again, a lot of sectarian groups also developed in Hinduism, like Saivism and Vaishnavism and Shaktism. All right, Saivism, here the followers of Shiva, Vaishnavism, followers of Vishnu. These are all avatars, and in all its avatars. And Shaktism is considered to be the god of Shakti. It is a female personification of God, like Kali, Durga, Parvati, and all those will be included. That means the source of energy, the source of power is derived from goddess, right? So these are the various sectarian groups that were developed later on. And also there are also popular Hinduism. Popular Hinduism is nothing but the Hinduism that we daily encounter and we see, their way of life, their way of practice. Like and this popular Hinduism is quite different from what we study in philosophy, all right, or what we have learned so far. In popular Hinduism, you will see their own favorite gods whom they worship as a family, as a village. They will have their own favorite god, and they will be building a temple and they will be worshiping. Every Hindus in their homes, there will be a small room or an area, or on a wall, a small area will be kept aside, where their favorite god picture or the idol will be placed, and every morning or day they will be worshiping. Taking bath, is also considered as a purification rite. So these are some of the popular Hinduisms that we daily practice, that we daily encounter and see, Hindu way of life. So that is all about popular Hinduism. So in that way, I think we have come to an end of the introduction, as well as the Hinduism, which was very vast. In the afternoon, we will meet again with the rest of this of the religious practices. If you have any questions, you can ask. 6 minutes left. So
Hello,
far.
madam. Good afternoon. Hello.
Good afternoon. Yes, good afternoon. I can hear
Madam,
you.
madam, what about second topic, primal and Dalit religions?
Yes, I will pick that up. I'll pick that up in the second, in the afternoon.
Okay, thank you,
In
madam.
the afternoon, yeah. Of course, I will give you the notes, but I will just give you the definition as well as, definition of primal religion.
And ma'am, second question I want to ask you. This is actually wide subject. It's religious and related to ancient India. So would you kindly please tell us how should we read, and which topics should we cover while reading because it's so lengthy as you told in the morning.
Yes, yes. Not only I told, but if you see the syllabus, you can also find it that it's very, very lengthy. And of course, you can always take the help of the previous question papers. You can get it from the office, I believe. I do not know. You can take the correspondence. However, when I am mentioning important, I think you better take note of it. And while giving the lecture itself, when discussing itself, I used to also tell you, I also tell you how to read the topic, you know, its significance, implications to the context and all. So when you are reading the topic, you please keep your outlook open. And one only way is that for religion is very, very important for you to know the context of India, particularly, you know, the religious tensions that we have, communal tensions that we are having, fundamental rights basing on religion, freedom of expressions. These are certain knowledge that you need to have, and how fundamentalist, be it Hindu, Islam, or Christian, or whatever, you know. Of course, in India, since Muslims and the Christians are the minority, majority are the Hindus, right? So how these fanatics are at work in and is hindering the peaceful coexistence of our nation. These are the areas where you need to keep your mind open. And caste system is also one area that you need to keep your mind open. And I don't think you will have any problem referring. Otherwise, 90% of the syllabus is covered in the question paper.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Yes, and yes, yes.
Yeah, your teaching was really awesome. I have two questions. Hello. Yeah, I have two questions. Number one,
Yes.
you have said about Vishishta Advaita and Advaita, and who has developed Dvaita philosophy? Dvaita philosophy. This is point number one. Question number two is, so you have said that Indian Christian theology is totally based on these two frameworks, that is Advaita philosophy and then Vishishadvaita philosophy. I just want to know more about how it goes with this framework, how Indian Christian theology goes in this framework.
Okay, all right, okay. But I'm having only 2 minutes. Is it okay if I pick up in the next class?
Oh yes, no issue.
Right, because 2 minutes left, and then if possible, if you can come exactly at 2 o'clock, then we can easily pick up and take a longer time in discussions. All right,
Sure,
because
sure.
when it comes
have
to
a
the
small
topic,
question.
I'm giving you the notes.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a
So
very
discussion-
small question. Yeah.
Yes.
You mentioned about the Aryan invasion of India and the clash between the Aryans and the indigenous people.
Yes.
So was there a mixing of the two, or there was a separation that was maintained and which is still visible in today's society and today's Indian population, like the South and the North? Or are they do exist as separate races still today?
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. So these are the 3 questions I think I will pick up in the right after lunch, because hardly 2 minutes left. Anyway, in this 2 minutes, let me cover up at least some of the questions. See, the first question that you were asking about who is the propounder of Advaita Vedanta, right? So Advaita Vedanta is the Shankara. So Shankara is the propounder of Advaita Vedanta.
No,
right?
Dvaita.
Dvaita? Yeah, Madhava.
Yeah.
Dvaita is Madhava. These are all under coming under Vedanta philosophy. All right. All these are coming under Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta philosophies are basically Advaita, Vishishta Advaita, Dvaita. So these are the 3 popular ones, and then Madhava was the one who founded the Dvaita philosophy. All right. But however, basically you will see these 2 philosophies dominating the Indian Christian among the Indian Christian theologians who have used it, right? Then what was the next?
Did Dvaita come before the Advaita, or
no? Dvaita is the later on. Advaita was the first, and after that Ramanuja gave a little extra interpretation. He added that qualified monism, and Dvaita is like believing in 2 reality, existence of 2 reality. realities. But maybe when you are offered philosophy subject, I think we can deal with that in detail. But however, here as per the syllabus is only Shankara and Ramanuja. All right. So what was the next question? Another. Yeah.
Yeah.
How? Okay. Okay. About the Indian, how they have used the framework, that is little lengthy. I will pick up in the next class. And then regarding your question about the Hindu, the Aryans, isn't it? Came and settled whether there is fusion. It is just, see, it is just an assumption that you can make. Nowhere it is written that these two cultures have clubbed together and formed. Nowhere it is mentioned. And moreover, there is no history to know. But however, since we are all living our life and history has come down and we have read and seen, when two separate cultures meet, two cultures meet, there is always a tendency of a little bit of fusion also, right? Right? For example, I am an Ao, right? I am a Naga, right? If I'm born and brought up in Bengal, certainly in the process of my life, a little bit of Bengali nature, character, or practices will always be conditioning my way of life and thought, isn't it?
Madam, I'm not asking about the cultural development. I'm asking is there still a separation in the race?
Yes, race, you will find it very much. It is, see, when it comes to the division in India, we will see a lot of different races like Austroasiatics, Mongoloids, then Aryans, then Dravidians, isn't it? So it is, later on, some of the scholars, they classify it, the indigenous people, as the Dravidians, and that is why we always see tug of war between South and the Northern Indians, isn't it? The Northerns consider themselves as the Aryans.
Yes.
So there is always a tug of war, politically, religiously, in every way, culturally, there is a tug of war, and it is felt till today. And in political realm also, DMK came into existence because of these differences only.
Yes.
Racial differences, is it not? Today, all these have formed a political parties, right? But these were formed because under INC, it was basically the Northern that was dominating. So because of that, what is that? Kazakh felt that the Southern, the Dravidians needs and will never be fulfilled under the INC, and therefore they came out and formed the DK, isn't it? DK, and after that DMK was formed, right? Anyway, we will stop and we will continue in the next class. Let us meet exactly at 4 o'clock. Thank you so very much. Shall we wind up?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everybody once again. And we will on the class exactly at 2 o'clock, maybe little 5 minutes earlier. I request all of you, please join by 2 o'clock and latest by 2:05 or something, as much earlier. We will start the class. Okay. Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you, sir.